3 words. Just 3 simple words whispered in the darkness of a penthouse bedroom high above the city, and Dante Moretti's entire world stopped spinning. "I've never done this before." Her voice trembled like a leaf in winter wind, soft and vulnerable and so achingly honest that something inside his chest cracked wide open. He froze above her, his hands that had been confidently exploring the curves of her body suddenly still, his breath catching in his throat as if someone had stolen all the air from the room. Isabel lay beneath him, her chestnut hair spread across his silk pillowcases like a halo, her green eyes wide and luminous in the dim light filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. And in that moment, Dante Moretti, the man who had built a financial empire before his 35th birthday, the man who commanded boardrooms and made millionaires tremble with a single glance, realized that everything he thought he wanted had just transformed into something infinitely more terrifying and precious. If you want to discover how a chance encounter in an art gallery during a thunderstorm brought together 2 souls who were never supposed to meet, subscribe to the channel now. Leave a like if you believe that sometimes the universe conspires to give us exactly what we need, even when we're not looking for it. And tell me in the comments, have you ever met someone who changed everything in a single moment? Your presence here means everything. The storm had arrived without warning, the way summer storms often do in the city, turning the afternoon sky the color of bruises and sending sheets of rain hammering against windows and pavement. Inside the Morrison Gallery in the heart of downtown, Isabel Chen stood transfixed before a painting that seemed to capture everything she felt, but could never say. It was abstract, all swirling darkness, punctuated by unexpected bursts of gold, as if someone had tried to paint hope struggling to survive in chaos. She didn't hear him approach, didn't sense his presence until his voice, low and rich like aged whiskey, spoke from just behind her left shoulder. Remarkable, isn't it? The way Castellano captures the violence of transformation. Isabel startled, nearly dropping the exhibition catalog she'd been clutching. She turned to find a man standing close, too close by normal standards, but somehow the proximity didn't feel invasive. He was tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair that fell in careless waves that suggested he ran his fingers through it often. His eyes were an unusual shade of amber, almost gold in the gallery's subtle lighting, and they studied her with an intensity that made her skin warm. He wore a charcoal suit that even her untrained eye recognized as obscenely expensive, tailored so perfectly it might have been sewn directly onto his frame. But it was his face that held her, all sharp angles and shadows, beautiful in a severe way that suggested he smiled rarely and meant it even less. "I'm sorry," she managed, her voice coming out softer than she intended. "I didn't mean to monopolize the viewing space." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, there and gone so quickly she might have imagined it. "You're not monopolizing anything. I've been watching you look at this painting for 10 minutes. The way you see it, it's like you understand what Castellano was trying to say." Something in his tone made her brave. And what was he trying to say? That transformation is always violent. That becoming who we're meant to be requires destroying who we were. That the pain is worth it. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning that seemed to transcend art criticism. Isabel found herself unable to look away from those amber eyes, feeling as if he was reading something in her that she'd never shown anyone. "I'm Dante," he said, extending a hand. Dante Moretti. His name sounded Italian, rolled off his tongue with a slight accent that suggested old-world elegance mixed with new-world ambition. She took his hand, and the moment their skin touched, something electric passed between them. His palm was warm, his grip firm but not aggressive, and she felt her pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with nervousness and everything to do with a recognition she couldn't name. Isabel Chen, she replied, and watched something flicker in his expression. Interest? Curiosity? She couldn't tell. Are you an artist, Isabel? The way he said her name with careful precision, as if tasting each syllable, made her stomach flutter. No, I'm a teacher. 3rd grade. I come here sometimes when I need to remember that beauty exists. She felt immediately foolish for saying something so revealing to a stranger, but Dante's expression softened in a way that transformed his severe features into something approaching warmth. A teacher, he repeated, and there was something in his voice, a kind of reverence that surprised her. That's noble work. It's chaotic work, she said with a small laugh. 28 8-year-olds with opinions about everything and attention spans measured in seconds. But yes, I love it. Outside, thunder cracked so loudly the gallery windows rattled. The lights flickered once, twice, then steadied. Isabel glanced toward the windows where rain was now falling so hard it looked like a solid wall of water. Looks like I'm trapped here for a while, she said, trying to keep her tone light. Then let me buy you a coffee, Dante said, gesturing toward the small cafe tucked into the corner of the gallery. We can wait out the storm together, and you can tell me more about these 28 philosophers you're raising. She should have said no. Should have recognized that men who looked like Dante Moretti, who wore suits that cost more than her monthly rent, who moved through the world with the confidence of someone who had never been denied anything, were not the kind of men who ended up with elementary school teachers from modest backgrounds. But there was something in his eyes, a loneliness that matched her own, a hunger for genuine connection that seemed to transcend the obvious differences between them. Okay, she heard herself say. Coffee sounds perfect. The gallery cafe was nearly empty, just a barista wiping down counters and an elderly couple speaking in hushed tones near the window. Dante ordered for both of them, a cappuccino for her and an espresso for himself, and led her to a small table tucked away in the corner where they could watch the storm rage outside while remaining dry and warm. So, he said, settling into the chair across from her with a grace that suggested he was comfortable anywhere. Tell me about your philosophers. Isabel wrapped her hands around the warm cup, grateful for something to do with her nervous energy. They're brilliant and exhausting. Yesterday, during science, we were talking about the water cycle, and one of my students, Marcus, raised his hand and asked if clouds ever get tired of raining. Another student, Sophie, said that clouds can't get tired because they don't have feelings, and then Marcus said that everything has feelings, even rocks. And suddenly, I had a 20-minute debate about the emotional lives of inanimate objects. Dante laughed, a real laugh that lit up his entire face and made him look years younger. And what did you tell them? I told them that scientists don't believe rocks have feelings the way we do, but that asking questions and wondering about the world is exactly what makes them such good thinkers. Then I redirected to evaporation before someone asked if the ocean gets sad when water leaves. Brilliant diplomacy, Dante said, his eyes crinkling at the corners. You must have the patience of a saint, or the stubbornness of a mule. My mother says I get it from my father. He was a teacher too, before he passed. She hadn't meant to mention her father, hadn't meant to let anything so personal slip out, but something about Dante made her want to be honest, made her feel safe being vulnerable. I'm sorry, Dante said, and the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Recently? 5 years ago. Heart attack. Sudden, she took a sip of her cappuccino, using the moment to steady herself. He would have loved this gallery. He taught high school art before the budget cuts forced him into general humanities. He always said that art was the language of the soul. Dante was quiet for a moment, his fingers tracing the rim of his tiny espresso cup. When he spoke again, his voice carried a weight it hadn't before. My father believed that art was a waste of time, that the only thing that mattered was power and money and control. He built an empire and died alone in a hospital room surrounded by lawyers instead of loved ones. The raw honesty in his words created an intimacy between them that felt both sudden and inevitable, as if they'd been building toward this conversation for years instead of minutes. "Is that why you're here?" Isabel asked softly. "In the gallery? Looking at paintings about transformation?" Dante met her eyes, and what she saw there took her breath away. Pain, yes, but also a desperate kind of hope, as if he was searching for something he'd lost or perhaps never had. "I'm here because I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not being who my father wanted me to be. I'm here because I inherited everything he built, and I don't know if I want it anymore. I'm here because I saw you standing in front of that painting, looking like you understood something I've been trying to understand my whole life." The confession hung in the air between them, vulnerable and brave. Isabel felt her heart squeeze with an emotion she couldn't name. "And what's that?" she whispered. "That it's okay to want something different. That transformation is possible. That maybe the person I was supposed to be isn't the person I became, and there's still time to change that." Outside, the storm continued its assault on the city. But inside the small cafe, wrapped in the warmth of honest conversation and the gentle hiss of the espresso machine, Isabel felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Connection. The thrilling, terrifying possibility that this moment might matter. They talked for 2 hours. The storm raged and eventually passed, leaving the city washed clean and glistening under emerging sunlight, but neither of them noticed. Dante told her about growing up in a mansion that felt like a mausoleum, about boarding schools in Switzerland and expectations that crushed like physical weight, about building his own investment firm that had made him wealthier than his father ever was, and feeling emptier with every success. Isabel shared her own story. Growing up in a small apartment above her parents' restaurant in Chinatown, the smell of garlic and ginger and her mother's dumplings filling every corner of her childhood. Working 2 jobs to put herself through college after her father died, choosing teaching because she wanted to give kids what her father had given his students. A sense that they mattered, that their thoughts were valuable, that the world was bigger and more beautiful than they could imagine. "You're remarkable," Dante said when the barista finally came over to tell them the cafe was closing. "You know that? The way you see the world, the way you talk about your students, it's like you carry light inside you." Isabel felt heat rise in her cheeks. "I'm just a teacher who lives in a studio apartment and can barely afford this coffee." "No," Dante said firmly, reaching across the table to take her hand. The touch sent electricity up her arm. "You're someone who chose a life of meaning over a life of comfort. That takes courage I'm not sure I have." "You're here, aren't you?" she said, squeezing his fingers gently. "In a gallery, looking at art, asking questions. That's courage, too." He held her gaze for a long moment, his thumb brushing across her knuckles in a gesture so tender it made her chest ache. "Have dinner with me," he said, and it wasn't quite a question. "Tonight. Tomorrow. Whenever you're free. I want to know everything about you, Isabel Chen. I want to understand how you stayed soft in a world that tries to make everyone hard." She should have been cautious, should have recognized the danger in falling for someone from a completely different world. But looking into Dante's amber eyes, seeing the loneliness and hope and desperate hunger for something real, she found herself nodding. "Tomorrow," she said. "I'm free tomorrow." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise, warm and promising and full of possibility. And when he walked her out of the gallery into the rain-washed evening, his hand resting lightly on the small of her back, Isabel felt her carefully constructed life shift on its axis. She didn't know yet that this man would change everything. Didn't know that she was standing at the edge of a transformation as violent and beautiful as the painting that had brought them together. Dante sent a car for her. Not just any car, but a gleaming black Mercedes with a driver in a crisp uniform who opened the door for her and called her Miss Chen with such respect that Isabel felt like an imposter in her simple navy dress and ballet flats. She'd agonized over what to wear, trying on everything in her modest closet twice before settling on the only dress she owned that didn't scream struggling teacher on a budget. But sitting in the back of this car, watching the city slide past through tinted windows, she felt the gulf between her world and Dante's world yawn wide and terrifying. The restaurant was on the top floor of one of those buildings that punctured the skyline, all glass and steel and breathtaking views. The maître d' greeted her by name, as if he'd been expecting her, as if women like her belonged in places like this. He led her through a dining room, where every table held people who looked like they lunched with senators and vacationed in the Mediterranean, to a private corner where floor-to-ceiling windows framed the city like a living painting. And there, rising from his seat with a smile that made her heart stumble, was Dante. He'd abandoned the suit for dark slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his elbows, revealing forearms that were surprisingly muscled for a man who spent his days in boardrooms. His hair was slightly mussed, as if he'd been running his fingers through it, and there was something in his eyes, anticipation mixed with nervousness, that made him suddenly human and accessible despite the obvious wealth surrounding him. "Isabel," he said, and her name on his lips sounded like a prayer. He took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he lifted it to his lips and pressed a kiss to her knuckles, a gesture so old-fashioned and elegant that she felt her breath catch. "You look beautiful. You look nervous," she said with a smile, trying to ease the tension she felt crackling between them. He laughed, that same bright sound she'd heard in the gallery cafe. "I am nervous. I realized after you left yesterday that I forgot to ask if you even like Italian food. I just assumed, and my mother always said assuming makes well, you know. I love Italian food," Isabel said, letting him guide her to her seat. "And even if I didn't, I'd eat it anyway just to see you this flustered. It's humanizing. I'm discovering that you have that effect on me," Dante said, settling into his own chair, "making me human again. I'd forgotten what it felt like." Dinner was a revelation. Not the food, though it was extraordinary, each course a masterpiece of flavor and presentation, but the conversation. The way Dante listened to her stories about her students with genuine fascination, asking follow-up questions that showed he was actually hearing her, not just waiting for his turn to talk. The way he shared more about his own childhood, about feeling like a disappointment to a father who measured worth in dollars and dominance. About his mother, who died when he was 12, and how he sometimes stood in front of paintings in galleries, trying to remember the sound of her laugh. She loved art, he said, swirling wine in his glass, watching the ruby liquid catch the light. My father hated that about her, said it was frivolous. But she'd take me to museums when he was traveling, and we'd make up stories about the people in the paintings. She said that art was how we remembered that being human meant feeling things, not just acquiring things. She sounds wonderful, Isabel said softly. She was. And I think she'd like you. The way you see the world, it reminds me of how she saw things, like there's magic hiding in ordinary moments if you're paying attention. The compliment settled around Isabel's shoulders like a warm shawl. My father used to say something similar, that teaching was about helping kids see the extraordinary in the everyday. That a sunset is just physics until someone helps you understand it's also poetry. Dante reached across the table, his fingers finding hers, intertwining naturally as if their hands had been designed to fit together. Tell me something, he said, his voice dropping to something intimate despite the elegant surroundings. If you could do anything, go anywhere, Be anyone. What would you choose? Isabel thought about it, really thought, while Dante's thumb traced small circles on the back of her hand. Honestly, I'd still be a teacher. Maybe I'd have a bigger classroom, better supplies, more time to spend with each kid. But the core of it, helping children discover who they are, I can't imagine wanting to do anything else. Even if you could have all this? Dante gestured to the restaurant, the view, the obvious luxury surrounding them. All this is beautiful, Isabel said carefully, but it's not real. Not in the way that matters. Real is Marcus asking if clouds have feelings. Real is Sophie bringing me a drawing she made of her family and trusting me to understand why her dad isn't in the picture anymore. Real is knowing that I spent my day trying to make the world better in a small but meaningful way. Something in Dante's expression shifted, softened and intensified simultaneously. You're going to ruin me, Isabel Chen. You know that? You're going to make it impossible for me to go back to the life I had before I met you. Is that what you want? She asked, her heart beating faster. To go back? No, he said with absolute certainty. I want to go forward. And I want you with me. The declaration hung in the air between them, heavy with promise and possibility. Isabel felt the weight of it, felt the terrifying exhilaration of standing at the edge of something that could either save her or destroy her. I live in a 400-square-foot studio, she said, needing him to understand. I take the subway. I buy my clothes at Target. My idea of a splurge is getting guacamole at Chipotle. We're from different worlds, Dante. I don't care about worlds, he said fiercely, his grip on her hand tightening. I care about this. This feeling. This connection. I care about the fact that for the first time in years, I feel like I'm talking to someone who sees me, not my bank account, or my last name, or what I can do for them. After dinner, Dante offered to have his driver take her home, but Isabel declined. She needed to walk, needed the cool night air to clear her head and process everything she was feeling. To her surprise, Dante asked if he could walk with her, and before she could answer, he'd already dismissed the driver and was standing beside her on the sidewalk, looking impossibly handsome in the glow of streetlights. They walked for blocks without speaking, their shoulders occasionally brushing, the silence between them comfortable and charged simultaneously. The city moved around them, taxis honking, people hurrying past, the constant hum of urban life, but Isabel felt cocooned in a bubble that contained only her and this man who was quickly becoming essential to her in ways she didn't fully understand. This is me, she said finally, stopping in front of a modest brick building in a neighborhood that was gentrifying but hadn't quite gotten there yet. 4th floor walk-up. No elevator. No doorman. No view. Dante looked up at the building, then back at her, and his expression held no judgment, only curiosity. Can I see it? Isabel's heart stuttered. See what? Your place. Your world. You've seen mine. I want to see yours. She should have said no. Should have recognized the danger in letting this man, this beautiful, wealthy, complicated man, into her small, simple space. But she found herself nodding, found herself leading him up 4 flights of stairs that creaked under their weight, found herself unlocking the door to her studio and watching his face as he took in her entire life contained in 400 square feet. It was nothing like his world. Her bed was also her couch, covered in colorful throw pillows she'd made herself. Her kitchen was a hot plate and a mini fridge. Her desk was covered in student paper she needed to grade, crayon drawings pinned to the wall above it, each one a masterpiece of childhood imagination. Her bookshelf sagged under the weight of children's literature and lesson plan binders. The whole space smelled like the jasmine candle she burned to cover the scent of the restaurant downstairs. It's perfect, Dante said, and she could hear he meant it. It's you, warm and full of color and creativity and life. He walked slowly around the small space, studying the drawings on her wall, the photographs of her students at various school events, the small altar she kept with her father's picture, and fresh flowers. He picked up a children's book from her desk, flipping through it with careful attention. "The Giving Tree," he said, reading the cover. "I remember this one. My father read it to me every night for a year when I was 6, Isabel said, closing the door behind her, suddenly very aware that they were alone in her most intimate space. I must have memorized it. I still cry at the end. Because the tree gives everything and ends up alone?" Dante asked, setting the book down gently. "Because love sometimes means sacrifice," Isabel said, "and because even when we give everything, sometimes it's enough, and sometimes it isn't." Dante turned to face her fully, and the intensity in his amber eyes made her breath catch. He took a step toward her, then another, until he was close enough that she could smell his cologne, something expensive and subtle, with notes of cedar and bergamot. "Isabel," he said, his voice rough, with an emotion she couldn't name. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to really hear me." She nodded, unable to form words, her heart pounding so hard she was sure he could hear it in the quiet of her small apartment. "I've dated before," he continued. "Beautiful women, successful women, women who knew how to navigate my world, and every single time I felt like I was performing a role, being who they expected me to be, playing the part of Dante Moretti, heir to a fortune, master of the universe. But with you, from the moment you turned around in that gallery, I felt like I could just be. Be honest, be vulnerable, be the man I actually am instead of the man I was trained to be." He reached up, his hand cupping her cheek with such tenderness that tears pricked the corners of her eyes. "You're dangerous to me. Do you understand that? You make me want things I thought I'd given up on. Connection, meaning, a life that matters more than money. You make me want to be better." "Dante," she whispered, but he shook his head gently. "I'm falling for you, Isabel Chen. Fast and hard and completely. And I know it's too soon. I know we just met. I know all the logical reasons why this shouldn't work. But I don't care about logic right now. I only care about this feeling. This certainty that finding you in that gallery was the universe giving me exactly what I needed, even though I didn't know I needed it." Isabel felt tears slip down her cheeks, felt the walls she'd built around her heart crumbling like they were made of sand. "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "I'm terrified, because I feel it too, this pull toward you, this sense that you see me in a way no one else ever has. But our worlds are so different, Dante. How does this even work?" "I don't know," he said honestly, his thumb wiping away her tears. "But I want to find out. I want to try. I want to wake up every morning and choose you. Choose this. Choose us. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." The kiss that followed felt inevitable, like gravity finally winning a battle it had been fighting since the moment they met. His lips were soft but insistent, asking a question her body answered without hesitation. Isabel's hands found their way to his chest, feeling his heart pounding as hard as hers, and when he deepened the kiss, pulling her closer until there was no space between them, she felt something inside her shift and settle, and say yes. This. Him. Now. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, and Dante's hands were trembling slightly where they held her face. "Stay," Isabel heard herself say, the word escaping before she could think about what it meant. "Tonight. Stay with me." Dante pulled back enough to look into her eyes, searching for something, and whatever he found there made his expression soften with such tenderness it took her breath away. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice rough. "Because, Isabel, If I stay, if we do this, there's no going back. You'll be mine, and I'll be yours, and I won't be able to let you go." "I'm sure," she whispered, and in that moment, standing in her tiny studio apartment with this man who had appeared in her life like a storm, she was sure, terrified, ready. She took his hand, leading him the few steps to her bed, and when he pulled her down beside him, his kisses growing more urgent, his hands exploring with increasing confidence, she felt herself surrendering to something bigger than fear, stronger than logic. When his fingers found the zipper at the back of her dress, she didn't stop him. When he paused, asking permission with his eyes, she nodded. The dress slipped from her shoulders like water, pooling around her waist, and Dante's sharp intake of breath made her skin warm. His hands, which commanded boardrooms and built empires, trembled as they traced the curve of her collarbone, the line of her shoulder, as if she was something precious that might break under too much pressure. "You're beautiful," he whispered, his voice thick with an emotion that went deeper than simple desire. "So beautiful it hurts to look at you." Isabel reached for his shirt, her fingers fumbling slightly with the buttons, and he helped her, shrugging out of it, to reveal a chest that was lean and muscled. The body of a man who took care of himself not out of vanity but discipline. She ran her hands over his skin, feeling the rapid beat of his heart, the warmth radiating from him. And when he lowered her back onto the bed, his weight settling over her felt right, in a way that made tears prick her eyes again. They took their time, exploring each other with hands and lips and breathless words. Dante kissed her throat, the hollow between her collarbones, the sensitive skin just below her ear, and Isabel arched into his touch, feeling her body respond in ways she'd never experienced before. Every previous relationship, every previous intimate encounter, felt like a pale shadow compared to this, to the intensity of connection she felt with this man. "Isabel," he murmured against her skin, his hand sliding lower, removing the last barriers between them with such care it made her chest ache. "Tell me if you want me to stop. Tell me if it's too much. Tell me anything." "Don't stop," she breathed, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. "Please, Dante. Don't stop." He kissed her then, deep and slow and thorough, and as his body aligned with hers, as she felt him hesitate at the threshold, she whispered the words that would change everything. "I've never done this before." The effect was instantaneous. Dante froze completely, his entire body going rigid above her. His eyes, which had been dark with desire, suddenly cleared with shock and something else, something that looked almost like fear. "What?" The word came out strangled, barely audible. Isabel felt heat flood her cheeks, embarrassment and vulnerability warring in her chest. "I'm sorry, I should have told you earlier, I've never, with anyone, I never found the right person, never felt safe enough, until now, until you, and I understand if you don't want to, if it's too much pressure, if." He kissed her, cutting off her rambling explanation, and this kiss was different. Softer. Deeper. Full of something that felt like reverence. When he pulled back, his hand cupping her face with such tenderness she thought she might shatter, there were tears in his eyes. "You're giving this to me?" His voice cracked on the words. "This gift. This trust. You're giving it to me?" "Yes," she whispered. "If you want it. If you want me. Want you?" Dante's laugh was shaky, emotion thick in his throat. "Isabel, I'm terrified. Terrified of hurting you, of not being worthy of this, of ruining something so precious. But yes, God, yes. I want you. I want this. I want to be the one you trust with your body and your heart and everything you are." He shifted, his weight settling more fully over her, and his hand slid down to tangle with hers, their fingers intertwining. "But we're going to go. Slow. I'm going to make sure you feel safe. I'm going to make this beautiful for you if it's the last thing I do. Okay? She nodded, unable to speak past the emotion clogging her throat, and when he began moving again, his lips finding hers, his free hand stroking gentle patterns on her skin, she felt herself relax into his touch. He took his time, building the sensation slowly, checking in with her constantly through whispered questions and searching looks. When he finally pressed forward, crossing that threshold with excruciating care, Isabel gasped at the sharp sensation, her fingers tightening on his. Dante stopped immediately, his forehead dropping to hers, his breathing ragged. "Breathe," he whispered. "Just breathe, Bella. I've got you. We'll go as slow as you need." They stayed like that, frozen in the moment of transition, while Isabel's body adjusted to the newness of him. Dante held perfectly still, his muscles trembling with the effort of restraint, pressing gentle kisses to her face, her temples, her closed eyelids, murmuring soft words in Italian that sounded like prayers. "Okay," she finally whispered. "I'm okay. You can move," and he did, with such gentleness and care that new tears spilled down her temples. Each movement was measured, controlled, his eyes never leaving hers, watching for any sign of discomfort. But the sharp pain faded, replaced gradually by something else, a building warmth, a pleasure that grew with each careful thrust. "That's it," Dante breathed, his voice strained. "That's it, Bella. You're perfect. So perfect." Isabel felt herself responding, her hips moving to meet his, and when Dante groaned her name like a man in prayer, when his control started to slip and his movements became more urgent, she wrapped her legs around him, pulling him deeper, giving him permission to let go. The moment when he finally lost control, when his carefully maintained composure shattered, and he buried his face in her neck with a sound that was half sob, half triumph, Isabel felt something inside her chest crack open. This wasn't just physical. This was soul deep. This was transformative. This was everything she'd waited for without knowing she was waiting. Afterward, they lay tangled together in her small bed, Dante's hand stroking slow patterns up and down her spine, her head resting on his chest where she could hear his heart still racing. "Are you okay?" he asked softly, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. "Did I hurt you?" "I'm more than okay," Isabel said, and she could hear the wonder in her own voice. I don't have words for what I am." "Changed," Dante supplied, his arms tightening around her. "Transformed. Because that's what you did to me too, Bella." Morning arrived too soon, pale light filtering through Isabel's thin curtains and painting the small studio in shades of gold and rose. She woke slowly, awareness returning in layers. The warmth of another body beside her, the scent of cedar and bergamot mixed with something earthier, more intimate, the slight soreness between her legs that reminded her of everything that had happened in the darkness. Dante was already awake, propped on one elbow, watching her with an expression so tender it made her chest ache. His hair was mussed from sleep and her fingers, his jaw shadowed with morning stubble, and he looked so human, so different from the polished millionaire she'd met in the gallery, that she felt her heart squeeze with affection. "Morning," he said softly, his free hand reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. "How are you feeling?" Isabel took inventory. Sore, yes. Vulnerable, absolutely. But also, alive in a way she'd never experienced before. "Like everything changed," she said honestly. "Like I can't go back to who I was before last night." "Good," Dante said, leaning down to kiss her forehead, her nose, her lips. "Because I don't want you to go back. I want you exactly as you are right now. Open and honest, and mine." The possessiveness in his voice should have alarmed her, but instead, it made her feel safe, claimed, chosen. "Yours," she repeated, testing the word. That's a big statement. It's the only statement that matters, Dante said firmly. You're mine, Isabel Chen, and I'm yours. Completely. Irrevocably. Whether you live in a studio apartment or a mansion, whether you teach third graders or run a corporation, whether we've known each other for 2 days or 20 years, you are mine. He punctuated each word with a kiss, and Isabel felt herself melting into his certainty. But reality intruded when her alarm clock buzzed aggressively, reminding her that it was Monday morning and she had 28 third graders waiting for her. I have to get ready for school, she said reluctantly, making no move to leave the warmth of his arms. Dante groaned, pulling her closer. Call in sick. Spend the day with me. I'll take you to breakfast. We'll walk through the park. I'll worship your body properly in a bed that's actually big enough for 2 people. The temptation was real, but Isabel shook her head. I can't. Mrs. Patterson's daughter just had a baby, and she's already covering for another teacher. If I call in sick, they'll have to split my class between 3 other rooms, and Marcus gets anxious when his routine changes, and Sophie needs her math intervention in the morning, and you're an incredible teacher who cares deeply about her students. Dante finished, sitting up and pulling her with him, which is one of the 1,000 reasons I'm falling in love with you. Okay. You go teach. I'll go to work. But tonight, have dinner with me again. Please. Okay, Isabel agreed, and tried not to think about how easily he'd said those words. Falling in love with you. As if it was simple, as if their different worlds didn't matter, as if love was enough. She showered quickly while Dante made coffee on her hot plate, and when she emerged wrapped in her robe, she found him standing in her tiny kitchen area, looking impossibly handsome and completely out of place among her mismatched mugs and second-hand furniture. This is surreal, she said, accepting the coffee he offered. You. Here. In my world. I like your world, Dante said, pulling her close for a kiss that tasted like coffee and promises. It's real. Authentic. Everything mine isn't. Your world has its advantages, Isabel pointed out. Climate control. Space. More than one piece of furniture. My world is empty, Dante said seriously. Yours is full of color and warmth and purpose. I'd trade every square foot of my penthouse for one night in this bed if it meant waking up next to you. The declaration made her eyes sting with tears. You say things like that so easily. Because I mean them, he said simply. He stayed while she got ready, sitting on her bed and watching her move through her morning routine with such focused attention that she blushed under his gaze. When she finally stood before him in her teaching clothes, a simple blouse and slacks with comfortable flats, he looked at her like she was wearing a ball gown. Beautiful, he said, standing to wrap his arms around her waist. Absolutely beautiful. I teach 8-year-olds, Isabel laughed. They don't care what I look like. But I do, Dante said. And I'm already counting the hours until I can see you again. They left her building together, and Isabel was very aware of her neighbors' curious stares when they saw her with this obviously wealthy, obviously handsome man. Mrs. Chen from downstairs actually stopped sweeping her stoop to gawk. Dante's driver was waiting at the curb, and he offered to take her to school, but Isabel declined, needing the familiar routine of the subway to ground herself. Tonight, Dante promised, kissing her one more time before reluctantly letting her go. 6 o'clock. I'll pick you up. Isabel floated through her teaching day in a daze. Her students noticed immediately. Miss Chen, you're smiling a lot, Marcus observed during morning circle time. Did something good happen? Something wonderful happened, Isabel said honestly, unable to keep the joy out of her voice. I met someone special. Sophie, her most romantic student, gasped dramatically. Like a prince? Like in the stories? Like a real person, Isabel corrected gently, even better than a prince. But even as she said it, she couldn't help thinking that Dante was prince-like in some ways. Powerful, wealthy, able to command attention and resources with a snap of his fingers. The thought made her uneasy. A small voice in the back of her mind whispering that fairy tales always had complications, that princes and commoners rarely lived happily ever after in the real world. She pushed the thoughts aside, focusing on her students and their needs. But during lunch, while her class was at recess, she couldn't resist pulling out her phone. There was already a message from Dante waiting. Counting the hours, already missing you. Yours, D. The simple words made her smile so wide that her colleague Jennifer noticed. Okay, spill, Jennifer demanded, sitting down across from her in the teacher's lounge. You look like someone who got thoroughly, Jennifer. Isabel protested, glancing around to make sure no one else was listening. But her blush gave her away. Oh my God, Jennifer breathed. You did. You actually did. With who? Please tell me it's not that guy from the gym who keeps asking you out. No, Isabel said, unable to keep the smile off her face. Someone new. Someone I just met. And you already slept with him? Jennifer's eyebrows rose. Isabel Chen, the woman who hasn't dated in 2 years, who said she was waiting for the right person. You slept with someone you just met? It wasn't like that, Isabel protested. But even as she said it, she realized how it sounded. She had slept with someone she'd known for less than 48 hours. Had given him something she'd never given anyone else. Had trusted him with her body and her heart in a way that was completely out of character for careful, cautious Isabel Chen. Then what was it like? Jennifer asked, her tone gentler now, curious rather than judgmental. Isabel looked down at her phone, at Dante's message still glowing on the screen. It was like finding something I didn't know I was missing, like recognizing someone I've known forever, even though we just met, like coming home. Jennifer's expression softened. Okay, that's actually really beautiful. Tell me everything. Who is he? What does he do? How did you meet? His name is Dante, Isabel said slowly, editing the story even as she told it. He's in finance. We met at an art gallery during that storm on Saturday. We talked for hours, and it felt right. She didn't mention the penthouse restaurant or the Mercedes or the obvious wealth, didn't mention that Dante's last name was Moretti, and that a quick Google search would reveal he was one of the most successful investment managers in the city. Didn't mention that their worlds were so far apart that this thing between them felt both magical and impossible. Finance, huh? Jennifer said approvingly. Stable job. That's good. When do we get to meet him? I don't know, Isabel said honestly. We're taking things one day at a time. But even as she said it, she felt the weight of Dante's declaration from that morning. You're mine. Completely. Irrevocably. There was nothing one day at a time about the way Dante looked at her. The certainty in his voice when he talked about them. He was already all in, already committed, already planning a future she wasn't sure how to navigate. The rest of the school day passed in a blur. Isabel taught her lessons, helped Sophie with her fractions, mediated an argument between 2 boys over basketball rules, and graded spelling tests. But underneath everything, she felt different. Changed, as if losing her virginity to Dante had altered something fundamental in how she moved through the world. When the final bell rang and her students filed out, calling goodbye and see you tomorrow, Isabel sat at her desk for a long moment, trying to process everything that had happened in less than 72 hours. 3 days ago, she'd been alone and content in her small life. Now she felt like she was standing at the edge of something vast and terrifying and wonderful, and she had no idea if she had the courage to jump. Her phone buzzed. I'm outside, Dante's text read. Couldn't wait until 6. Isabel's heart leaped. She grabbed her bag and hurried out of the building, and there, leaning against that same black Mercedes with his hands in his pockets and sunglasses hiding his eyes, was Dante. He looked like a cologne advertisement, all sharp lines and expensive clothes and casual elegance. Her students who were still waiting for pickup stared openly, and she heard whispers of Miss Chen has a boyfriend and he looks like a movie star following her as she walked toward him. "Hi," she said, suddenly shy despite everything they'd shared the night before. "Hi yourself," Dante said, pulling off his sunglasses to reveal amber eyes that devoured her. He pulled her into his arms right there on the sidewalk, in front of her school and her students and anyone who cared to look, and kissed her with such thorough intensity that she forgot to be embarrassed. "I missed you," he murmured against her lips. Every hour felt like a year. "It's been 9 hours," Isabel laughed, but she was holding him just as tightly. 9 hours and 23 minutes, Dante corrected. Not that I was counting. He opened the car door for her, and this time Isabel didn't hesitate to slide into the leather interior. Dante settled beside her, immediately taking her hand and intertwining their fingers. "Where are we going?" she asked as the driver pulled smoothly into traffic. "My place," Dante said. "I want you to see where I live, and then I'm going to cook you dinner because I realized I told you I wanted to get to know everything about you, but you know almost nothing about me. That's going to change tonight." His penthouse was everything Isabel had imagined, and more. Floor-to-ceiling windows that offered 360-degree views of the city, sleek modern furniture in shades of gray and white, original art on the walls that probably cost more than her annual salary, a kitchen that looked like it belonged in a magazine, all marble countertops and professional-grade appliances. It was beautiful, sophisticated, expensive, and completely impersonal, like a very high-end hotel room rather than a home. "It's not very warm, is it?" Dante said, watching her take it all in. "My decorator chose everything, said it projected success and power. But walking in here after seeing your place, I realize it doesn't project me at all." "What would you choose?" Isabel asked, running her hand along the cool marble of the kitchen island. "If it was just about what you wanted," Dante considered, looking around his own space as if seeing it for the first time. Color, warmth, things that had stories attached to them instead of just price tags. Books, actual books, not designer books chosen for their spines. Photos of people I love instead of abstract art chosen by committee. Life. "So add those things," Isabel said simply. "It's your space. Make it yours." "I want to make it ours," Dante said, pulling her close. "I want your crayon drawings on my walls. I want your books on my shelves. I want to wake up in that bedroom and see your clothes mixed with mine. I want this space to feel like a home because you're in it." The declaration should have felt too fast, too much. But standing in his arms in his beautiful, empty penthouse, Isabel found herself wanting the same thing, wanting to bring color and warmth into his monochrome world, wanting to be the one who taught him that home wasn't about square footage or marble countertops. "Dante," she started, but he kissed her quiet. "I know," he said. "I know it's fast. I know we should slow down. I know all the logical reasons why I should be more careful. But Isabel, I've spent my entire life being careful, being calculated, making smart strategic decisions. And where did it get me? Here, alone in a penthouse that feels like a museum. Until you—" He cupped her face in his hands, his thumbs stroking her cheekbones. "You make me want to be reckless." Dante cooked for her. Actually cooked, not just ordered from some expensive restaurant. He put on music, jazz that filled the penthouse with warmth, and moved through his pristine kitchen with surprising competence. Isabel sat on a bar stool at the island, watching him chop vegetables and season chicken, and felt something in her chest expand with tenderness. You can actually cook, she said, surprised. I thought men like you just had chefs. Men like me, Dante repeated with a smile. My mother taught me before she died. Said that a man who couldn't feed himself was dependent, and dependency was weakness. She wanted me to be self-sufficient. He paused, his knife stilling on the cutting board. Of course, my father disagreed, said cooking was servants' work. We had a huge fight about it when I was 16, and he found me in the kitchen making risotto. He said I was embarrassing the family name. What did you do? Isabel asked softly. Kept cooking, Dante said simply. In secret, late at night when he was asleep or traveling. It was my rebellion, my way of holding on to her memory and everything she tried to teach me about being human instead of just being powerful. The pain in his voice made Isabel slide off the stool and wrap her arms around him from behind. She pressed her cheek against his back, feeling the tension in his muscles, the way he relaxed slightly into her touch. She'd be proud of you, Isabel whispered. The man you became despite your father. The man who stands in art galleries looking at transformation. The man who isn't afraid to be vulnerable. Dante turned in her arms, pulling her close, and for a long moment they just stood there in his massive kitchen, holding each other while jazz played and the city glittered outside the windows. Dinner was delicious. Dante had made chicken piccata with roasted vegetables and a salad, simple food prepared with care. They ate at his dining table, which could easily seat 12, but felt intimate with just the two of them. Tell me about your childhood, Isabel said, twirling pasta on her fork. The real version, not the sanitized public story. Dante leaned back in his chair, wine glass in hand, and his expression grew distant. It was lonely. My father was always working, always building, always chasing the next deal. My mother tried to make up for his absence, but she was fighting a losing battle. When she died, it was like all the warmth left the house. He sent me to boarding school 2 months later. Said I needed to learn discipline and strength. How old were you? 12, Dante said quietly. Old enough to understand what was happening. Young enough to still need a parent who actually cared. I'm sorry, Isabel said, reaching across the table to take his hand. That must have been devastating. It was, but it also made me who I am. I learned to rely on myself. Learned that showing emotion was dangerous. Learned that people leave, so it's better not to need them in the first place. He squeezed her fingers. Until you. You make me want to unlearn everything my father taught me. They finished dinner and moved to his living room, settling onto a couch that was as beautiful as it was uncomfortable. Isabel kicked off her shoes and curled into Dante's side, her head resting on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. Can I ask you something? Dante said after a while, his fingers playing with her hair. Anything. Why me? His voice was soft, vulnerable in a way she'd never heard before. Why did you trust me with something so precious? You could have had anyone, Isabel. Someone from your world. Someone without all my baggage. Someone normal. Isabel lifted her head to look at him, seeing the genuine confusion and wonder in his eyes. Because you saw me, she said simply. In that gallery, when I was standing in front of that painting, you didn't just look at me. You saw me. The real me. The me I don't show most people, because it's easier to be just a teacher, just the nice girl who helps everyone. You saw the loneliness and the longing and the hunger for something more, and you didn't run away from it. You matched it with your own. She reached up to touch his face, feeling the slight stubble on his jaw. And because when you touched my hair and that calf, I felt something I'd never felt before. Recognition, like my soul knew yours, like we'd been looking for each other our whole lives without knowing it. Dante's eyes were bright with unshed tears. I felt it too. This certainty that everything in my life had been leading to that moment. Every decision, every mistake, every lonely night. It was all preparing me to find you. He kissed her then, slow and deep and thorough, and Isabel felt herself melting into him. When he stood, pulling her up with him, and led her toward his bedroom, she followed without hesitation. His bedroom was as impersonal as the rest of the penthouse, all sleek lines and neutral colors. But the bed was enormous, covered in what looked like Egyptian cotton sheets in shades of charcoal and white. Dante pulled her close, his hands sliding under her blouse, and Isabel shivered at his touch. "I want to do this right," he murmured against her neck. "Last night was beautiful, but I was so worried about hurting you, about making it good for you. Tonight, I want to worship you properly, show you everything I feel." He undressed her slowly, reverently, pressing kisses to each new patch of skin he revealed. When she stood before him in just her simple cotton underwear, he looked at her like she was wearing the finest lingerie money could buy. "Perfect," he breathed. "Absolutely perfect." Isabel reached for his shirt, returning the favor, mapping the planes of his chest with her hands and mouth. She could feel him trembling under her touch, could feel the restraint he was exercising, the way he was holding himself back. "You don't have to be gentle this time," she whispered. "I'm not going to break." Something in Dante's eyes darkened, intensified. "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Isabel said, and she was. She trusted this man completely. Trusted him with her body and her heart and her future. What followed was different from the night before. Still tender, still filled with care, but with an edge of passion that had been carefully controlled the first time. Dante loved her with an intensity that left them both breathless and shaking. He explored every inch of her body, learning what made her gasp, what made her arch into his touch, what made her cry out his name like a prayer. And when they finally came together, it was with a desperation and need that felt like coming home and jumping off a cliff simultaneously. Isabel lost count of how many times they reached for each other that night. Each time was different, urgent and slow, playful and intense, tender and demanding. By the time they finally collapsed into exhausted sleep, tangled together in his enormous bed, Isabel felt marked by him in ways that went far beyond the physical. She woke in the early hours of the morning to find Dante watching her again, that same tender expression on his face. "Do you always watch people sleep?" she murmured, stretching languidly. "Only the ones I'm falling in love with," Dante said seriously. There was that phrase again. Falling in love. Said so easily, as if it was already a settled fact rather than a terrifying possibility. "Dante," Isabel started, but he pressed a finger to her lips. "You don't have to say it back," he said gently. "I'm not saying it to hear an echo. I'm saying it because it's true. Because I want you to know how I feel. Because hiding it feels dishonest, and I promised myself I'd always be honest with you." Isabel kissed his finger, then took his hand and pressed it over her heart, where he could feel how fast it was beating. "I'm scared," she admitted. "This feeling, how fast it's happening, how much I already need you. It terrifies me." "Good," Dante said. "It terrifies me too, but I'd rather be terrified with you than safe and alone without you." They made love again, as the sun rose, slower this time, watching each other in the growing light. And when Isabel finally had to leave to get ready for school, Dante held her so tight she could barely breathe. "Move in with me," he said suddenly, the words spilling out as if he couldn't contain them. Isabel froze. "What? Move in with me. Bring your crayon drawings and your books and your jasmine candles. Make this place feel like a home. Let me wake up next to you every morning. Let me prove to you that this is real, that we can make this work. Dante, we've known each other for 3 days, Isabel protested, even though part of her wanted to say yes, wanted to jump into this with both feet and trust that he'd catch her. I don't care about timelines, Dante said fiercely. I care about what I feel. And I feel like I've found the other half of my soul. I feel like going back to a life where I don't wake up next to you would be settling for less than I deserve. Less than we both deserve. Let me think about it, Isabel said, her voice shaking. Please. This is a lot, and I need to process. Dante nodded, though she could see the disappointment in his eyes. Okay. Think about it. But while you're thinking, know that I mean every word. I want you here. I want us to build a life together. I want everything. He drove her home himself this time, in a sleek sports car that probably cost more than her parents' restaurant had made in a year. They didn't talk much during the drive, but Dante kept one hand on her thigh, his thumb tracing absent patterns that made concentration difficult. When they pulled up in front of her building, he pulled her close for a kiss that promised more. Tonight, he said. Dinner again? I should probably spend some time in my own apartment, Isabel said, though the words felt hollow even as she said them. Make sure my plants haven't died. Answer emails. Do laundry. Normal life things. Bring your laundry to my place, Dante suggested with a small smile. I have a washer and dryer. And a dryer that actually dries things instead of just making them slightly less wet. Despite everything, Isabel laughed. You're relentless. When it comes to you? Absolutely. She floated through another day of teaching, but this time her distraction was noticed by more than just her students. During lunch, the principal, Mrs. Martinez, stopped by her classroom. Isabel, she said, her tone gentle but concerned. Is everything okay? You seem distracted lately. I'm fine, Isabel said quickly. Just personal stuff. Good personal stuff. Nothing that's affecting my teaching. Mrs. Martinez studied her for a long moment. You're one of our best teachers. Your students adore you. Your lesson plans are creative and thorough, and you genuinely care about making a difference. I'd hate to see anything jeopardize that. Nothing's going to jeopardize it, Isabel promised, even as a small voice in her mind whispered that she wasn't sure that was true. How could she balance a relationship with someone like Dante and still give her students everything they deserved? The afternoon brought an unexpected complication. During dismissal, while Isabel was helping students find their backpacks and organizing the chaos that always accompanied the end of the school day, a black Mercedes pulled up in front of the school. But this time, it wasn't Dante's driver. It was Dante himself, stepping out of the car in a suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, carrying a bouquet of flowers that looked like it had been arranged by a professional. Her students went wild. Miss Chen, is that your boyfriend? Sophie squealed. He brought you flowers. Marcus observed. That's what people do when they're in love. He's so tall, another student whispered, like a superhero. Isabel felt her face flame as Dante walked toward her, completely unbothered by the attention, his eyes only on her. Hi, he said, offering the flowers. They were peonies and roses in shades of pink and cream, wrapped in elegant paper and tied with silk ribbon. I couldn't wait until tonight. You're causing a scene, Isabel whispered, very aware of the stares from other teachers, parents, and every single one of her students. I don't care, Dante said simply. He turned to her students, who were watching with unabashed fascination. Hello, Dante said to the children with a warm smile. You must be the famous third graders Miss Chen talks about constantly. She says you're the smartest, most creative class she's ever taught. The children preened under his attention. Sophie stepped forward, ever the brave one. Are you Miss Chen's boyfriend? She asked directly. I am, Dante confirmed, glancing at Isabel with such tenderness that several parents audibly sighed. I'm very lucky that she said yes when I asked her to dinner. Are you rich? Marcus asked bluntly, because 8-year-olds had no filter. You look rich. Marcus, Isabel protested, mortified. But Dante laughed. I do okay, he said diplomatically. But you know what I've learned? Money can buy a lot of things, but it can't buy what really matters. It can't buy someone as amazing as Miss Chen. I had to earn that by being honest and kind and showing her that I care about the things she cares about. He looked at Isabel then, and she felt her heart squeeze, like making sure smart, creative third graders have the best teacher possible. The children were charmed, the parents were intrigued, and Isabel felt the walls between her two worlds, which had felt so solid and protective, beginning to crumble. After dismissal, after the last student had been picked up and the other teachers had finally stopped finding excuses to walk past and stare, Dante pulled Isabel close. Was that okay? He asked. Coming here? I know you said you needed space to think, but I couldn't stay away. It was overwhelming, Isabel admitted. My students are going to talk about this for weeks, and the other teachers, they're going to have questions. Let them ask, Dante said. I'm not hiding you, Isabel. I'm not ashamed of this relationship or trying to keep it secret. I want everyone to know that you're mine, and I'm yours. But our worlds are so different, Isabel said, voicing the fear that had been growing in her chest. You show up in a Mercedes with expensive flowers, and I teach children for barely enough money to pay rent. How does that work long term? Dante was quiet for a moment, his hands sliding up to cup her face. It works because we make it work. Because we choose each other every day. Because I don't care about Mercedes or expensive suits or any of the trappings of wealth. I care about you, about us, about building something real. He pressed his forehead to hers. And as for the money difference, that's just logistics. We'll figure it out. Maybe you keep your apartment as a safety net, if that makes you feel secure. Maybe we find a place that's between your world and mine. Maybe I scale back my lifestyle and you let me help make your classroom dreams come true. There are 1,000 solutions, Isabel. The only question that matters is, do you want to find them with me? Isabel felt tears prick her eyes. Yes, she whispered. God help me, yes. I want to try. The smile that broke across Dante's face was radiant. He kissed her right there in front of her school, deep and thorough and full of promise. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against hers. Then, come home with me tonight. Bring a bag. Stay the week. Let's see what this looks like when we stop fighting it. Okay, Isabel agreed, and felt something in her chest settle and soar simultaneously. That evening, standing in her small apartment throwing clothes into a bag, Isabel felt the magnitude of what she was doing. She was jumping, trusting, letting herself fall for a man who had appeared in her life like a storm and changed everything. Her phone rang. Her mother. Isabel hesitated, then answered. Hi, Mom. Isabel, her mother's voice came through, warm and familiar. You haven't called in days. I was worried. Are you okay? I'm more than okay, Isabel said, sinking onto her bed. I met someone. There was a pause. Her mother repeated, and Isabel could hear the hope and concern warring in her voice. Tell me. So Isabel told her. Not everything. She edited the intimate details, but the important parts. Meeting Dante in the gallery. The connection that felt instant and deep. How different their backgrounds were. How scared and excited she felt simultaneously. Her mother listened in silence until Isabel finished. Do you love him? She asked simply. I think I'm falling, Isabel admitted. Fast. Maybe too fast. But Mom, When I'm with him, I feel seen in a way I never have before. Like he understands parts of me I didn't even know were there. Then that's all that matters, her mother said firmly. Your father and I, people said we were too different too. He was the artist, I was the practical one. He wanted to teach, I wanted to run a business. But we chose each other every day for 30 years until he died. Love isn't about being the same, Xiaobao. It's about choosing to bridge the differences. Tears spilled down Isabel's cheeks. What if I'm not strong enough? What if his world swallows me whole? Then, you remember who you are, her mother said. You're Isabel Chen. You're your father's daughter. You teach children to believe in themselves. You bring light wherever you go. Don't let anyone, not even someone you love, make you smaller. Make them bigger instead. I love you, Mom, Isabel whispered. I love you too. Now, go. Live. Take risks. Your father always said that a life without risk is a life half-lived. When Isabel arrived at Dante's penthouse an hour later, bag in hand, he opened the door like he'd been waiting by it. His eyes took in her overnight bag, and the smile that spread across his face was pure joy. You came, he said, pulling her inside and into his arms. Of course I came, Isabel said, breathing in his scent. I told you I would. No, but there was a part of me that was terrified you'd change your mind, that you'd decide this was too much, too fast, too complicated. It is all those things, Isabel said honestly, but I'm choosing you anyway. That night, Dante cooked for her again. They ate dinner curled up on his couch, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about a business deal that was stressing him out, and she told him about a student who was struggling with reading. They watched a movie, though neither paid much attention, too focused on each other. And when they finally went to bed, Dante held her like she was something precious, his hands stroking slow patterns on her skin. Thank you, he whispered into her hair, for taking this chance on me. On us, I promise I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of your trust. The next 2 weeks felt like living in a dream. Isabel fell into a rhythm of teaching during the day and coming home to Dante at night. Home. That's what his penthouse was becoming, despite her fears. She brought more of her things: toiletries, clothes, books, even a few of her students' crayon drawings that she hung on his pristine refrigerator. Dante encouraged every addition, seeming to delight in the way her presence made his space feel lived in. They cooked together, her teaching him her mother's dumpling recipe while he perfected his risotto technique. They talked for hours about childhood dreams and adult disappointments, about what they wanted from life and who they hoped to become. They made love with increasing confidence and creativity, learning each other's bodies and desires with devoted attention. But it wasn't all perfect. There were moments when the differences in their worlds created friction, like when Dante casually mentioned a charity gala he was expected to attend and suggested she come as his date, not understanding why she panicked about not having anything appropriate to wear, or when he offered to pay off her student loans as casually as he might offer to buy dinner, not comprehending why the suggestion made her feel small and dependent. I don't want to be a kept woman, Isabel said during one particularly tense conversation. I don't want you solving all my problems with money. I'm not trying to keep you, Dante protested, clearly frustrated. I'm trying to help. What's the point of having resources if I can't use them to make your life easier? Because I need to know I can take care of myself, Isabel explained, trying to make him understand. I need to know that I'm with you because I want to be, not because I need to be. Do you see the difference? Dante was silent for a long moment, processing. I do, he finally said. And I'm sorry, I'm used to fixing problems, and money is usually the fastest solution. But you're not a problem to be fixed, Isabel. You're perfect exactly as you are. They worked through it, finding compromises. Isabel agreed to let Dante buy her a dress for the gala, but she insisted on paying him back in installments. Dante agreed to consult with her before making any large financial gestures. They were learning each other's languages, building bridges between their different worlds. The gala was Isabel's first real introduction to Dante's social circle, and it was terrifying. She stood in the borrowed dress, a simple but elegant navy gown that Dante's stylist had chosen, and felt like an imposter among the designers and diamonds surrounding her. "You're the most beautiful woman here," Dante whispered in her ear as they entered the ballroom, "and the only one who matters to me." But beautiful didn't mean comfortable. Isabel smiled through conversations about summer homes in the Hamptons and European vacations, feeling the gulf between her life and theirs with every exchange. She was introduced as Dante's girlfriend and saw the surprise and speculation in people's eyes. Who was this nobody? Where did she come from? What was Dante Moretti doing with someone so obviously not from their world? "She's a teacher," she heard someone whisper as Dante stepped away to get them drinks. Elementary school. Can you imagine? What does she even talk to him about? The words stung more than Isabel wanted to admit. But then, Dante returned, and the way he looked at her, the way he touched her lower back possessively, the way he introduced her to a group of his colleagues, not as just his girlfriend, but as the most important person in his life, it made the whispers fade. "Gentlemen," Dante said to a group of men in expensive suits, "this is Isabel Chen. She's a third-grade teacher, and the woman who's teaching me what actually matters in life." One of the men, silver-haired and distinguished, raised an eyebrow. "A teacher? That's unusual for you, Moretti. I thought you preferred models and socialites." "I prefer authentic human beings," Dante said coolly. "Isabel is brilliant, compassionate, and doing work that actually makes the world better. She's changing children's lives every day. What are we doing? Moving money around and congratulating ourselves?" The subtle rebuke made the group shift uncomfortably. Isabel squeezed Dante's hand, both grateful for his defense and worried he was alienating his peers for her sake. But Dante seemed unbothered, steering her away from the group toward the dance floor. "Dance with me," he said, pulling her into his arms as a waltz began. Isabel had never learned to waltz, but Dante guided her effortlessly, his hand firm on her waist, his movements confident. "I'm sorry," she said softly as they moved. "I'm not very good at this. Your world, these people, I don't fit." "You fit perfectly," Dante insisted. "It's them who don't fit anymore. This world, these people, I've been realizing they're not my people. They're just people I do business with. You're my people, Isabel. You and your students and your mother and anyone who cares about something beyond their investment portfolio. You can't just abandon your entire life for me," Isabel protested. "I'm not abandoning anything," Dante said firmly. "I'm choosing what matters, choosing you." The gala lasted another 3 hours, and by the end, Isabel was exhausted from smiling and making small talk and trying to navigate a world that felt alien. In the car driving back to the penthouse, she rested her head on Dante's shoulder. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for defending me, for making me feel like I belonged even when I didn't." "You belonged because you were with me," Dante said, pressing a kiss to her temple, "and they better get used to seeing you there, because you're going to be by my side at every event from now on." But lying in bed that night, unable to sleep despite Dante's arms around her, Isabel wondered if that was sustainable. Could she really spend the rest of her life navigating his world? Could she maintain her sense of self when everything about his life seemed designed to make her feel small? The crisis came 3 weeks after they met, on an otherwise ordinary Thursday. Isabel was in the middle of teaching a math lesson when her phone, which she'd left on her desk, began buzzing incessantly. She ignored it, focusing on helping Marcus understand fractions, but it kept buzzing. During the student's independent work time, she glanced at it and felt her stomach drop. 17 missed calls, 12 from Dante, 5 from numbers she didn't recognize, and a text from Jennifer that just said, "Call me now." With trembling hands, Isabel asked the teacher next door to watch her class for a moment and stepped into the hallway. She called Dante first. He answered on the first ring. "Isabel, thank God. Are you okay?" "I'm fine," she said, confused by the panic in his voice. "What's wrong? Why are you calling so much?" "There's a story," Dante said, and she could hear him moving, could picture him pacing. "About us. Someone must have seen us at the gala, or maybe they've been following me. I don't know. But it's online. Pictures of us. Speculation about who you are. Some of it is... It's not kind, Isabel." Her blood ran cold. "What kind of speculation?" "That you're after my money. That I'm having some kind of crisis and you're taking advantage. That you're nobody trying to social climb. It's garbage. All of it. But it's out there. And I'm so sorry. I never wanted this for you." Isabel leaned against the wall, feeling like the floor was tilting. "Can you send me the link?" "Isabel, I don't think send it," she said firmly. The article was on one of those gossip sites that trafficked in celebrity and high society news. The headline read, "Investment mogul Dante Moretti slumming it with elementary school teacher." There were photos of them at the gala, leaving his building, him picking her up from school. And the text was brutal. It painted her as a gold digger, implied she'd deliberately seduced him, questioned what a man of his caliber was doing with someone so ordinary. The comments were even worse. Hundreds of strangers weighing in on her appearance, her worth, her intentions. Some defended her, but most were cruel in the way only anonymous internet commenters could be. Isabel felt sick. "I have to go," she told Dante. "I'm in the middle of teaching." "Isabel." "Wait." But she hung up, because if she stayed on the phone one more second, she was going to cry, and she refused to cry at school. She made it through the rest of the day on autopilot, teaching lessons she could do in her sleep, smiling at students while inside she was shattering. When the final bell rang and her classroom emptied, she sat at her desk and finally let the tears come. This was what she'd feared. This exposure, this judgment, this feeling that her quiet, simple life had been invaded and dissected by strangers who knew nothing about her but felt entitled to opinions anyway. Her phone rang again. Dante. She let it go to voicemail. Then, her mother called. Then, Jennifer. Then 3 more unknown numbers. She turned off her phone entirely and sat in the silence of her empty classroom, trying to figure out what to do. An hour later, there was a knock on her classroom door. She looked up, expecting the custodian, and found Dante instead. He looked wrecked, his hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it, his tie loosened, his eyes red-rimmed. "You turned off your phone," he said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind him. "I was terrified something had happened to you." "Something did happen," Isabel said, her voice hollow. "My private life became public entertainment. Strangers are calling me a gold digger. My students' parents are probably reading articles about me right now. My principal is probably going to call me in to discuss whether this is affecting my ability to teach." Dante crossed the room in 3 strides, kneeling in front of her chair and taking her hands. "I'm so sorry. I should have protected you better. Should have anticipated this. Should have what?" Isabel interrupted. "Not dated me? Hidden our relationship? Kept me as your secret?" "No," Dante said fiercely, "never that. But I should have prepared you for this possibility. Should have warned you that my life comes with scrutiny. Should have given you the choice about whether you wanted to deal with it." Isabel looked at him, this man she'd fallen so hard and fast for, and felt her heart breaking. I don't know if I can do this, Dante. This life. These people. This constant judgment. I'm a teacher. I work with children. I can't have gossip sites speculating about my sex life or my financial motivations. Then, we'll sue them, Dante said desperately. We'll make them retract everything. Well, that just makes it bigger, Isabel said, pulling her hands from his. Makes it a story. No, I think I need some space. Need to think about whether I'm strong enough for this. The words landed between them like bombs. Dante's face went white. Space, he repeated. You mean you want to break up? I mean I need to think, Isabel said, even though every word felt like swallowing glass. Need to figure out if I can really live in your world without losing myself completely. You won't lose yourself, Dante promised, reaching for her again. I won't let that happen. Isabel, please. Don't let strangers who know nothing about us destroy what we have. Don't let their ugliness take away something beautiful. But what if they're right? Isabel whispered. What if I am just some nobody who doesn't belong in your life? What if I'm holding you back from someone more suitable? Suitable? Dante's voice rose with frustration. I don't want suitable. I don't want someone from my world who knows which fork to use and how to make small talk at galas. I want you, Isabel. You, with your crayon drawings, and your third graders, and your beautiful, genuine heart. You, who makes me want to be better. You, who I'm falling more in love with every single day. The declaration should have made her melt, should have made everything okay. But instead, Isabel just felt tired. Tired of fighting the differences between their worlds. Tired of feeling judged. Tired of wondering if love was really enough. I need to go home, she said, standing up. To my apartment. I need to be alone. Isabel, please, she said, and her voice broke. Please, Dante, just give me a few days. Let me process this. She could see him wanting to argue, wanting to fix it, wanting to make it better. But finally, he nodded, standing slowly. Okay, a few days. But Isabel, know this. I'm not giving up on us. I'm not walking away. And when you're ready to talk, I'll be waiting. He left, and Isabel sat back down at her desk in her empty classroom and cried until there were no tears left. The next 3 days were agony. Isabel stayed in her apartment, ignoring calls from Dante, from her mother, from Jennifer. She read and reread the gossip articles, each viewing making her feel smaller. She thought about Dante's world and her world and whether the gap between them could ever really be bridged. On the third night, there was a knock on her door. Isabel opened it expecting the landlord and found her mother instead, carrying a container of soup and a determined expression. Mom, what? You've been hiding long enough, her mother said, pushing past her into the small apartment. Now you're going to eat soup and tell me everything, and then I'm going to tell you what your father would say if he were here. Over soup and tea, Isabel poured out everything. The article, the comments, the fear that she was losing herself, the terror that she and Dante were too different. Her mother listened without interrupting until Isabel finally ran out of words. Are you finished? Her mother asked gently. Isabel nodded. Good. Now listen to me. Your father, when he wanted to marry me, my parents said no. They said he was too poor, too idealistic, that he would never be able to provide for me properly. And you know what he did? What? He showed up at our house every day for 3 months, brought my mother flowers, helped my father fix things around the restaurant, proved through his actions that he loved me enough to fight for us. And eventually, my parents saw what I already knew, that he was a good man who would love me well. Her mother took Isabel's hands. The question isn't whether strangers approve of you and Dante. The question is, does he love you well? Does he make you feel valued and seen and cherished? Does he fight for you? Isabel thought about Dante defending her at the gala, about him showing up at her school with flowers, about him kneeling in her classroom, begging her not to give up. Yes, she whispered. He does all those things. Then why are you here instead of with him? It was a fair question, and sitting there in her mother's arms, Isabel realized the answer. She was scared of being hurt, scared of not being enough, scared of the transformation that loving Dante would require. But her father had always taught her that transformation, while painful, was also how we became who we were meant to be. She thought about the painting in the gallery where she'd met Dante. Violence and beauty intertwined. Pain and hope existing together. Maybe that's what love was. The courage to transform. The willingness to be remade. The trust that the pain of growth was worth the beauty on the other side. Isabel stood up, suddenly certain. I need to go, she said. I need to see him. Her mother smiled. Then, go. And when you get there, don't apologize for needing time. Just tell him the truth. That you choose him. That you choose to be brave. The penthouse was dark when Isabel arrived, and for a terrible moment she thought Dante wasn't home. But then she saw him, standing by the windows, silhouetted against the city lights. He turned when he heard the elevator, and even in the darkness she could see the hope and fear warring on his face. Isabel, he said, not moving toward her, as if afraid she was a mirage that would disappear. I choose you, she said, the words coming out strong and clear. I choose us. I choose to be brave enough to love you, even when it's scary. Even when strangers judge. Even when our worlds don't make sense together. Because you're right. What we have is too beautiful to let fear destroy it. Dante crossed the room in seconds, pulling her into his arms so tightly she could barely breathe. Thank God, he whispered into her hair. Thank God. I've been dying without you. These 3 days felt like 3 years. I'm sorry I ran, Isabel said, tears streaming down her face. I'm sorry I let fear win. You didn't let it win, Dante said, pulling back to cup her face. You just needed time to gather your courage. And now you're here, and that's all that matters. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of relief. And when he whispered against her lips, I love you, Isabel Chen. I'm so completely in love with you. She finally said the words back. I love you too. So much it terrifies me. But I'm choosing to be terrified with you instead of safe without you. That night, they made love with a new intensity, born from the knowledge that they'd almost lost each other. And when Dante whispered those 3 words that had started everything, I've never done this before, meaning something different now, meaning he'd never loved like this before, Isabel understood. This was their transformation, violent and beautiful, painful and perfect, the kind of love that remade you from the inside out. And as the city lights glittered outside the windows and Dante held her like she was something precious beyond measure, Isabel knew with absolute certainty that she'd made the right choice. Sometimes the greatest love stories start in the simplest places. An art gallery. A rainstorm. 2 souls recognizing each other across impossible distances. And sometimes having the courage to say yes to transformation, to trust in love even when logic says run. That's the bravest thing we can do. If this story touched your heart, if you believe in love that transforms, subscribe to the channel. Leave your like if you've ever been brave enough to choose love over fear. Become a member for early access to stories that remind us we all deserve to be seen, to be loved, to be transformed by connection. And if this story really moved you, click the super thanks button. Your support helps us continue bringing narratives that speak to the heart. Because in the end, we all need reminders that true love still exists, that transformation is possible, that sometimes the person who changes everything arrives when we least expect it. And maybe, just maybe, your one vulnerable conversation, one honest moment, one brave choice away from your own beautiful transformation